Hello and welcome back to the channel. As always, I'm your host, Morgan. And today we're gonna have a super chill video. Actually, no, we're not. That's not my style. We all know this. Today we're talking about an article from Scientific American that I do have linked down below. And we are talking about how the thawing permafrost is going to, or possibly going to, or maybe releasing microorganisms. And that is a whole new existential crisis that we need to discuss, especially in this year 2020, where everything that could possibly happen as a disaster is happening. All right, so today we're kind of going to go through bits and pieces of this article. It is a little bit of a long one, but it will be linked down below if you want to go read it yourself. So a little bit of background here. So if we rewind all the way back to August of 2019 and pop up in Iceland. Iceland held a funeral for a glacier that I cannot pronounce the name of, but the name should be popping up somewhere around here. So for that glacier, Iceland held a funeral because that was the first Icelandic glacier to be entirely lost to climate change. Now, the loss of a glacier is permanent. There is no going back. Once a glacier is gone, it's gone. It's kind of like when a species goes permanently extinct. But this thing kind of marked a whole new step in history, a whole new step in how we need to talk about climate change. We are seeing entire glaciers lost now, which is a big deal because glaciers are these big frozen things, and the loss of glaciers are being outpaced. In the last 10 years, the warming of the Arctic has outpaced projections so rapidly that scientists are now suggesting that the poles are warming 4 times faster than the rest of the globe. So that is a direct quote from this article. And in that direct quote, they do have another study linked. So as these glaciers are melting, as we're losing the Arctic and the Antarctic, but we're going to focus on the Arctic today, we are also seeing permafrost begin to thaw. Now, what is permafrost, you may be asking? Well, permafrost is kind of like ground that's permanently frozen because it's in these really cold areas that never really thaw all the way. And now you might be sitting there thinking, well, so what? The ground is thawing. Well, let's talk about why that's a big deal. Well, first of all, this glacier melt and permafrost thaw levels that we're seeing weren't supposed to happen until 2050 or later. That's giving you a bit of an idea of the whole time scale that we're looking at and about how accelerated everything is. This abrupt thaw of the permafrost is a bit concerning for biologists because we don't know what the microbial makeup of this permafrost necessarily is for sure. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by those big words that I just used? It means we don't know what microorganisms could possibly wake up. We don't know what pathogens, what viruses, what bacteria are going to be able to pop up, what's going to actually be viable to wreak havoc. And with the permafrost thawing, we don't know how fast these things are going to be able to spread once they do wake up. Because it's possible in areas that this is happening that we're not going to have a warning. Things are just going to happen. This whole permafrost problem is a problem because the permafrost does cover 24% of Earth's land surfaces. And this, again, this Arctic Permafrost land offers a bunch of unexplored microbial biodiversity. Those are big words. We're going to break it down. Again, microbial, those little microbes, those little microorganisms, those little things that can possibly be pathogens, those things that could possibly be viruses and bacteria, the likes of which living species have not seen for many, many years. Biodiversity, how diverse the biology is essentially what that means. So, unexplored microbial biodiversity. Microorganisms that are diverse that we have not looked at. We have a bunch of question marks. I'm not trying to fearmonger here. I'm trying to push that point home, and I think that this is an important point to be talking about, especially right now when the world is still essentially shut down because of a virus. It's possible that we'll see things like smallpox pop up again. Now, smallpox is effectively extinct right now in the population. Yes, there are vials of the virus, blah, 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 kept in labs. I'm not very up to date on all that stuff because I'm not a virologist, I'm not a microbiologist. I care more about the big things, but even the big things, not on the individual level. I'm more into ecosystems and things. I study ecology. But the thing is, so if smallpox were to pop up again or something similar, it would be a big problem because that's just like one example of a disease that can spread very, very quickly with a very, very high death rate. And that's just the thing. We know that this is a possibility. And as climate change is accelerating the thawing of things like the permafrost that has possibly buried these. Now, again, it's possibly, as another direct quote from this article, the layers may still contain ancient frozen microbes, Pleistocene megafauna, and even buried smallpox victims. As the permafrost thaws with increasing rapidity, scientists' emerging challenge is to discover and identify the microbes, bacteria, and viruses that may be stirring. Again, this is not for sure, but it is something that I think that people need to talk about because that is one of the consequences of the changing climate, especially the accelerated changing climate, because it's possible that with people going in and out of these areas, with people going about their daily lives in places like Greenland, Iceland, places that are thawing, Canada, Alaska, it's possible that a virus could pop up without warning. And the fact that these microbial communities are not studied, we don't know what could still be viable. There's a lot of question marks, and people are already mad and whining about COVID-19. And that's not even as bad as it could possibly get. So this is something that I'm not saying we need to panic about. Like, don't panic about it, but it is like a sobering reality that we're living in right now. And like, climate change is a real thing, and this is one of the very real health consequences of it. So one thing that this article does note, one paragraph that I am going to read you, and why we need to be concerned about microbes and stuff in these permafrost environments, why we need to be concerned about what could be preserved there, what could pop up, especially the viruses. The viruses are a thing that we need to be especially concerned about because viruses are not technically living things, and we're not entirely sure exactly how long they could survive in a frozen state. That's the thing. Viruses are weird, that's why I'm not a virologist, and they're terrifying. All right. Permafrost thaw in Siberia led to a 2016 anthrax outbreak and the death of 200,000 reindeer and a child. but the hardy spores of Bacillus anthracis, sorry, names are in Latin, they're hard to pronounce. Here's the genus species name right here. May represent an exception to the brutal freeze-thaw cycle that degrades more delicate bacterial and viral pathogens. Their adaptable characteristics have allowed them to remain frozen and viable over centuries of inactivity. What exactly does that paragraph mean? Because I understand that people who are not used to reading articles about scientific research might be a little confused about all the information that's contained in those 3 sentences. Basically, what they're saying is that in 2016, we saw a case where the permafrost thaw did lead to this anthrax outbreak. We're seeing that it is possible for these viral and bacterial pathogens to survive being frozen for that long. So it's a concern. Now, again, it does note that the more delicate counterparts may not survive being frozen for so long and may break down. I do apologize for my dog barking. One of my neighbors has gotten a delivery and Chewbacca says that is absolutely unacceptable. Okay, I think we can continue on. And again, I'm not trying to scare you here. I'm trying to say this is a thing that I think it's a little irresponsible that mainstream media is not talking about. I understand that it's not a sexy subject to talk about, but it is something that we need to talk about. If we continue on in the article, organisms that co-evolved with now extinct ecosystems from the Cenozoic to the Pleistocene may also emerge and interact with our modern environment in entirely novel ways. That basically just means that these prehistoric organisms that were already evolved to deal with those environments may now pop up again and we have no idea what's gonna happen. Like, that's just how it is. Novel ways is a fun way of saying unique, basically. A potential example, the emerging orthopox virus species Alaska pox, causing skin lesions, has appeared and disappeared in Alaska twice in the last 5 years. It is possible that the virus was transmitted through animal-human contact, but this novel virus's origin remains unknown. So, again, novel here means unique, basically. So this is a unique virus. It's not attributed to anything else. And as the permafrost keeps melting, especially in places like Alaska, especially in places like Canada, Greenland, Iceland, Siberia, all these northern places where we're seeing permafrost melt, I think that it is completely reasonable to prepare for more novel things popping up like that. I mean, this one thing, Alaska pox, has been popping up on and off for twice in the last 5 years, which I know doesn't sound like much, but perhaps it's something that's kind of hard to spread. What if something that's not hard to spread pops up? What if something that's not hard to spread with an incubation period that's fairly long pops up, and say it's a researcher or someone out hiking in the very brief summer of these Arctic tundra areas, and they bring it home to a very populated city. These are things we need to think about and prepare for. I'm not saying panic. I'm not saying hole up in your house. I'm saying this is something that we need to be real about. This is something that needs to be funded and researched, especially since the scientists that are researching it are already scrambling to learn more, because really we have a bunch of question marks here. And the scary thing is that I'm seeing here is a lot of these microbes that are in these freezing conditions we're likely already adapted for these periods of freezing and thawing. And that is one of the hypotheses here, and that these microbes are more likely to be generalists, meaning they don't specialize on one species. So basically the bottom line here, which I do think was wrapped up very nicely by this article, is that there are new microbes that are going to be popping up that are entirely unfamiliar to scientists, which may present novel threats in the future. And let's just read these last two paragraphs, because I do think that they hammer the message home pretty well. It is clear that the warmer we make the Arctic, the weirder it will get. As temperatures at the surface become more extreme and thawing deepens, with the coalescence of microbes reawakening from the deep and surface conditions unprecedented in human history, it is challenging to assess risks accurately without improved Arctic microbial datasets. We should pay attention to both unknowns such as antibiotic-resistant bacteria and unknown unknowns, including the potential risks from the resurrection of ancient and poorly described viral genomes from the Arctic ice by synthetic biologists. For all these reasons, we must come up with guidelines for future Arctic research. As travel through the region increases, the likelihood of pathogen export and import rises as well. The planetary protection guidelines that space agencies follow to prevent interplanetary contamination can provide a framework for how microbial investigation can safely continue. Biosurveillance measures must be put into place to protect communities in the Arctic and beyond. As the Arctic continues to transform, one thing is clear: as climate change warms this microbial repository during the 21st century, the full range of consequences is yet to be told. So, to summarize basically what that means is, the regulations we have in place are not enough. There are a lot of unknowns, from unknown threats to unknown unknowns, which I get seems a bit like gobbledygook when you say that, but it is important to mention that there are unknowns that we can't even conceive right now. And that as the Arctic does warm, there's more travel throughout the region. Like I said, there are more people that are actually traveling to these places. Ecotourism is starting to be a thing, not as much in the Arctic as it is in other places, but it is something that needs to be thought about. And just the communities that already live up there where the permafrost is thawing need a better way to protect them than what they already have from anything that may happen. And we also need to be aware that it is possible, if something wakes up and ends up in a host that can get it to a city like LA or New York or like any big city anywhere, we can be looking at something that we are not able to deal with very well. And if the current pandemic that we are dealing with is any indication for how the globe will handle something like this, I am not impressed. Again, I'm not saying hole up in your home. I'm not saying be terrified. I'm not saying be scared. I'm saying be aware. Do your research. Please look into more climate change stuff. This is another reason why we need to be taking steps to prevent as many of the negative consequences of climate change as possible, because this is a direct consequence of climate change. And even though, yes, the world goes through periods of cooling and warming, our warming rate is so accelerated that our scientists aren't even able to really understand these microbial communities in the permafrost that are going to be just popping up to say hello like any month now. And frankly, I'm not interested in saying hello to any of them. But again, Don't be terrified. Arm yourself with knowledge. Be prepared. Be smart about things. Vote for good policies, and please, please advocate for climate responsibility. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe down below. This is another one where I am genuinely interested in seeing any comments, any thoughts that you have. And I do think that this is something that needs to be talked about on a wider scale. And it does horrify me that the mainstream media is not talking about things like this. But I do understand that it can cause general panic because topics like this, the nuances are not really, people are not used to talking about scientific problems and big things like that. I get that in the general populace, scientific literacy is not emphasized, and that's a problem as well, but that's a video for another day. So I do hope that I haven't instilled too much existential dread in you today, and I do hope that you manage to have a wonderful rest of your day, afternoon, evening, night, what have you. I will see you all in the next one. Thank you again for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell if you would like to see more. And if you'd like to follow me on any of my other social medias, the links are down in the description below. Don't forget to check out thereptilegoth.com for all of my articles and blog posts. If you found any value in this video and you would like to help support the channel, please check out my Patreon page. That link is also in the description down below. And a special thanks goes out to my Diamond Dragon patron, Diane V. What you're doing is really helping me fund a dream here. I will see you guys all in the next one.